Welcome to Beatsource Tech. My name is Mojaxx, and there's no doubt that I've had a lot of fun recently talking about high-end boutique rotary mixers and the like here on the channel. But for this episode, I've decided it's time for a little palette cleanser. So let's get into something purely designed for scratching, the Stanton STX. I'll admit it, I'm pretty late to the party with this one. The Stanton STX dropped about a year ago, and due to a snafu I got my review unit late. At that point I'd missed the moment, so it dropped down my list of priorities. What that means though is that at this stage I've had a full year to mess with it, so consider this a long-term review. That is sort of fitting however, as by releasing the STX when they did, Stanton also kind of missed the big Portablism wave, which really happened prior to 2020. I'm certainly not saying that Portablism is dead, far from it, but the movement was a lot more visible and hyped in those earlier years. Since then it's settled down and simply become a permanent fixture in the turntablism world. There is the annual Portablist Lounge battle in the UK, and DMC even has a Portablist category in their World Championships. A lot of you watching this might be thinking that Stanton is a name you've not heard of for a long time, and you'd be right. After a long period of turmoil, the brand was sold to InMusic, who are also the parent company of brands like Rain, Denon DJ and Newmark. Since that acquisition, there have only been two products released, the DS4 cartridge and the STX. I would love to see more, as the brand does come with some serious heritage attached. Of course, InMusic were a huge part of that initial Portablism wave, as many people were introduced to the concept via the PT01 portable turntable. That wasn't designed with cutting in mind, but thanks to countless enterprising modders, it quickly became the bedrock of the scene. It was later followed by the PT01 Scratch, which came with a small scratch switch built in. On the original, faders had to be external. Since then, there have been two turntables released which are designed with Portablism in mind. The Reloop Spin, which I reviewed back in 2019, and the Omni, which I've yet to get my hands on for a decent amount of time. There's also a new one on the way from Korg later this year. So for context, as of today, the market looks like this. The PT01 Scratch is around $170 in the US, with the Reloop Spin going for around $330, and the Omni goes for roughly $400. The STX sits somewhere in the middle at $250. One note, products from Reloop always seem to be more expensive in the US than elsewhere. In Europe, the Spin is slightly cheaper than the STX. The STX is also somewhere in the middle when it comes to size. It's bigger all around than the PT01, but has a square shape as opposed to the rectangular design of the Spin. Like both of those, it's constructed entirely from plastic, which helps keep it at a fairly lightweight 5.3 pounds, which is what you want from a device designed to be carried around with you. Nonetheless, it's solid enough. I've thrown it in the trunk of my car plenty of times and it still looks box fresh. There are some very neat touches with the design. The STX is pretty low profile, shorter than the others, but the lid is designed to be flipped upside down and used as a stand, which then makes it taller than both and brings it up to around the height of a full-sized turntable. The connections are all nicely recessed underneath the body, but again, this is clever. When the STX is sitting on the lid, there is a slot to allow any cables to come out cleanly. The STX comes with two 18650 lithium-ion batteries, but only uses and charges one at a time, so the second is just there as a spare. I was getting around a couple of hours out of a full charge on each, which was great, but of course extras are easily sourced, and so there's nothing to stop you carrying more around if you wanted. Charging is done via a USB-C socket, and it can be used while connected, which means you can also run the STX not just off wall power, but also from a power bank. Whatever you use, it does need to be providing a 5V 2A supply. I had mixed results with power delivery chargers, but other than that, the power supply situation on the STX is simply superb. One area where you can see the InMusic DNA of the STX is in the tone arm, which appears to be identical to the one on the PT01. This has a ceramic cartridge on the end, which is not exactly great for playing precious regular vinyl on in terms of sound quality or record wear, but it holds very steady with your favourite 7-inch battle records. I'd kind of forgotten how well those arms track before getting the STX. It really is quite impressive. I say 7-inch battle records specifically because unlike with the PT01 or the Spin, the way Stanton have laid out the STX means you can't play anything larger, not even 10-inch vinyl. Obviously nobody is using bigger records for scratching on these anyway, but that does put paid to any alternate use of the STX for crate digging or general listening, unless you only ever play 45s. This one really is just for the portabilists. We move on to the all-important fader, and that's where the STX really does stand out from the crowd. The PT01 has that little switch, which is fun but no substitute for a real fader, and the Spin has a fairly basic fader as standard, which doesn't have a great cut-in distance. The STX though comes with a mini InnoFader Nano already installed. Regular viewers will already know how much of a fan I am of InnoFaders in general, and things are no different here. Low maintenance, incredibly long lifespan, and highly adjustable. There's really nothing more I could ask for. The flexibility of fader positioning on the STX is pretty unparalleled too. There are slots on each side of the platter for you to place it in, and you can rotate it within those slots, and there's nothing to stop you adding a second fader into the free slot either. As well as third-party options for around $65, InnoFader also offer a kit with a matching plate and 2 blue fader caps, so you can have an STX which caters to both left and right-handed scratching at the same time. We'll talk about adjustment shortly, but before that let's discuss the platter. As expected, the STX is a belt drive turntable which, with a lightweight plastic 7-inch platter, offers enough torque for the job in hand. But the downfall of the PT01 for me was always just how much vertical movement there was when you pushed down on the platter. Well, that's not an issue with the STX, which has virtually no movement in that situation. It is completely stable. A serious upgrade, and one which really helps with the tracking performance. As we move on to the controls, it becomes clear that Stanton have taken note of what kinds of upgrades people were doing on their PT01s. In the centre we have an illuminated start-stop button, as well as a fader reverse switch, and a switch to select which fader you're going to use if you have two. The panel on the right features a lot of stuff. There's a short throw pitch fader which can be set to ultra pitch, adding that used to be a fairly common mod. The pitch accuracy isn't that great, but not in a way which will really cause any problems. I found the STX to be running at around plus 2% when set to 0, and in regular mode I was getting a range of roughly -8 to plus 10%. In ultra pitch mode it ends up around plus and minus 40%. There's a switch to go between 33, 45 and 78 RPM, and then a basic tone control. That only impacts the record you're playing, not any external input, and that's the case for the level control above that too. Anything coming into the STX will need to have its volume controlled at the other end. Then there are more fader controls, one for cut-in distance and the other for the shape of the curve. They both work absolutely fine, no complaints. One thing I will point out is that, according to InnoFader, that pre-installed Nano is set with a cut-in distance of 0.7mm at its shortest, which I found to be fine, but if you want to go tighter still, you can pull the fader out, do some more adjustments to it and get it absolutely razor sharp. We'll talk connectivity next. There are two ways to get Beats into the STX, via an 1/8" line input on the recessed rear panel and via Bluetooth. The Bluetooth has worked flawlessly for me throughout my testing. Table Beats is still my go-to looper app for cutting over, but it worked fine with whatever app I was using on my phone. When it comes to the outputs, things are both flexible and inflexible at the same time. The built-in speaker is what you'd expect. Nothing to write home about in terms of sound or volume, but it does the job for sitting around and cutting. No complaints from me. There's also a pair of headphone sockets, 1/8 and 1/4 inch, and a line level output on RCAs. What's slightly annoying is that the STX can obviously handle only one output at a time. Plug in any of those and the speaker is switched off. No issues there. But you can't have both large and small jacks connected for headphones at once, once. It defaults to the smaller one in that situation, and with any headphones connected, the RCAs no longer work. So if you're wanting to record your cuts via the RCAs whilst monitoring on headphones at the same time, it can't really be done. You'll have to go via a splitter or an external mixer. But you might be asking, why would you need to do that? Surely there's a USB port on top and a record button. Well, that's my one actual disappointment with the STX, because that feature is a bit weird. Firstly, the manual doesn't specify which drive formats are supported. I found it worked with FAT32. And that same manual also says it records files as WAVs, and mine doesn't. It spits out a rather unusual 320k MP3 in 44 kHz, but for some reason 32-bit. Most importantly, I just didn't find it reliable. All of my recordings jumped from one point to another at multiple times, as if the recording had dropped. All the intercut bits of me using the STX in this video took ages to line up manually because the audio and video were out of sync at multiple points. And there was originally going to be a live demo section, but in the end I gave up trying to make that sync altogether. Normally I'd be inclined to blame my USB sticks, but I use the same ones to record my live stream videos in 1080p via my ATEM, so I know they have enough speed for a simple MP3 recording. And so that means I can't really recommend the STX's built-in recording feature for anything more important than just listening back to yourself casually. If you're making a video, for example, you'll want to find another way, and that means you'll run into the single output problem as detailed previously. As I say though, that's my only real disappointment with the STX, because otherwise it really is fantastic. The form factor, the flexibility with the fader or faders, the comprehensive power options and the great performance means that this is my favourite Portablism turntable I've reviewed to date. It takes what the PTO1 offered and combines it with the best ideas from the modding world to create a portable which you really can just take out of the box and start getting busy with right away. And naturally, if you do want to take it further, then a year after release, there are numerous options to mod it to your taste too. If you weren't sure already, then the STX is truly a sign that Portablism is alive and well in 2024. So there you go, my take on the Stanton STX. This is really the first portable I've tested which is truly fully ready to go out of the box. The reloop is good, but the stock fader isn't really all that, and so most people will want to upgrade eventually. There is also the Omni, which I haven't reviewed, but that costs a fair bit more than the STX. And that means I have no hesitation in recommending the STX to anyone who wants a straightforward turnkey solution for getting into Portablism. It still has the potential to be fully modded out if you want, but this one really is a device that you can just pick up and get going with straight away. It's been a while since I checked in with the Portablism community, so in the comments let us know. Are you practicing, jamming, performing or battling with a portable? And which events are still popping in that world? Sound off down below. Thank you for watching this episode of Beatsource Tech. I do hope you've enjoyed it or found it useful. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel and you turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time.